I've been using the buildable Battle for the Ark Master Chief statue as a base to transform various other Halo mega sets into mech style builds, and today for the first time we're going to see what those mech builds look like sat alongside their original vehicles they've transformed from, as well as putting all the mechs out on display at the same time to see how they compare to one another in size and stature. I'm Brickman117, welcome back to the channel. First up, we got a Warthog from the Warthog Rally set for the Halo Infinite line. This was the first mech I ever created, and it seemed like the obvious choice to start with given how iconic the Warthog is within the Halo universe. It's also the most straightforward of the builds as well. And if you fancy having a go yourself, I did create a tutorial video to actually create this mech. And it's also worth pointing out, if you haven't seen these videos before, each one of these mechs are created using solely the parts from the buildable Chief set, as well as the vehicle that you see featured. No additional parts are required or added for any of these builds, and the reason I did this was so more people could have a go at creating them if they wanted to without needing a huge amount of parts that they more than likely wouldn't be able to get their hands on. Next, we have the Warthog from the Warthog vs Banished Goliath set. And at a glance, it looks very similar to the Warthog Rally mech, but on closer inspection, it's quite different. This was a more involved build. It wasn't quite as straightforward to create, but I managed to implement all the key factors from the Warthog that I really wanted to make an appearance on this mech. Unfortunately, there's no instructions for this one because at the time of filming this, I don't have a spare Warthog, which aids in the way that I create the tutorials to be able to build these from. As you can see, for scale comparison, I have put the Goliath next to it that comes with this set. But for reference, apart from the drone sticking off his shoulders, it's basically the same height as the Warthog Rally mech. Next up, we have the Wraith from the Wraith Ambush set, and I chose this set for two reasons. One, I wanted to try my hand at creating a non-UNSC mech, and two, this Wraith, the parts in it just screamed out to being used for some kind of Covenant elite mech. And whilst this transformation was hands down the most challenging, because unlike the two mechs you've seen to date, which utilise most of the original Battle for the Ark build, you're just adding on to them. Most of this Wraith build was a from the ground up rework, especially the legs because of the way they hinge. That took an awful lot of thinking and working out to get that to work. And whilst this mech has received wide criticism for the arms being too short, aside from that, I'm still exceptionally pleased with how well this mech turned out, and is still one of my favourites to date. If nothing more, it's the only Covenant purple mech that I've created. Next up, we got the Hornet from the Hornet Recon set, and this vehicle lent itself so well to being transformed into a mech. It was actually enjoyable. I really enjoyed creating this mech. And whilst once again at a glance the build shares a resemblance to the original buildable Chief statue, there was a huge amount of reworking to the feet and the torso, especially to integrate some of those key Hornet features, both with the canopy on the front of the chest and then the wing section with the turbines on the back. For me, this build feels more refined than some of the others, and I think it's because, as I say, the Hornet just lent itself so well to this transformation. Next up, we've got the Scorpion from the Scorpion Clash set. And although by far the most popular mech according to YouTube views at nearly 93,000 views at time of recording, it's probably my least favourite build experience. This was incredibly challenging. It was the first time I tried to up the scale of these builds. You'll see later when we compare them, it is substantially larger than the other UNSC mechs you've seen to date. Because of this, the added bulk of it being a tank, I really wanted it to be bulked out, just overloaded the ball joints, which made it an absolute nightmare trying to make it so it would actually stand up under its own weight. That said, it went through 3 different iterations off the back of viewer feedback from the original build, and whilst I definitely prefer this final result, there's something about the build that just still eats at me, and it may be just because it was such a challenging build. It was a real slog, but I guess you can't win them all. Next up, we've got the Banished Phantom, which is not only the biggest set I've transformed at almost 1,000 pieces, but also the first mech that I created that I didn't actually really want to create. This was a viewer request. So many people asked me to transform the Phantom into a mech. I honestly didn't think I would be able to do it, and I went in very negative, thinking it just wasn't possible to create anything worthy of showing with the Phantom set. Not only did I manage to create a mech, I actually created a mech that I, one, enjoyed creating, and two, really enjoyed the final result of. Because of the sheer size of this mech, it is huge. I had to completely rethink the way I put these mechs together, especially when it came to the joints. I needed to find a new way to distribute the load. As you can see, this mech is extremely top heavy. It also has that ginormous shield. Coming up with ways to implement this so it didn't collapse on itself was a real thinker, but real rewarding at the same time. Highlights of this mech for me are the head. I'm really pleased with how the head turned out, and also all of the back sections with the spines to represent a hunter style look. For me, this one just worked out, so it was well worth the struggle. And then finally on to the Falcon from the Falcon sweep set, another viewer request. This time one that I was happy to fulfill, not because I thought this build was going to be easy. In fact, I didn't. I knew it was going to be challenging, but one, I really wanted to create a mech with all of those blades that come with the Falcon. And two, I really wanted to create something in a different color, and I'm a big fan of this older dark forest green with all the printed pieces that come with the Falcon sweep set. I knew if I pulled it off, it was going to be pretty special. But once again, this transformation did create a number of issues. I suspected the parts in the Falcon sweep set would be challenging to build a mech from, and they were. I had to think outside the box again, like creating cybernetic lower legs due to the lack of usable parts in the set to do otherwise. I also struggled with the head. It went through a number of rebuilds, and in the end I had to settle for what I have. Whilst I really like the style and design of the head, it's unfortunately slightly oversized for the mech. But when you're limiting yourself to the parts in the set, sometimes you have to make compromises. And as far as compromises go, I'm happy with that, because the rest of the build I'm absolutely over the moon with. I had it in my mind's eye how I wanted this mech to look, the feel, the vibe of the mech, and I feel like I managed to stay true to my vision of what I wanted this mech to look like. So definitely one of my favorite mechs, if not possibly my favorite. It's so hard to choose. But you don't need me to choose. What we'll do now is we'll line them all up on the desk at once so you can see them all alongside each other, see the size and scale difference of each mech, and then I think I'll just let you lot decide in the comments which is the best mech. Feel free to give a rundown, and I can assure you I'll take great satisfaction in reading all of your comments and seeing how you rate these mechs. So first up, the Warthog, the Forgehog and the Hornet, they're all pretty much the same height because they're all built off the standard buildable chief, so they all come in at pretty much the same height. We'll use the Warthog mech going forward to act as a comparison for all the other builds. As you can see, the Wraith mech comes in ever so slightly taller, but he is sat down on his legs. You know, elite legs can extend quite a lot if you've got the micro action figures, so he can extend himself up quite a bit taller than he is at the moment. Next up, we've got the first of the big boys, and we start with the Scorpion tank mech, and he is clearly bigger and way bulkier than the Warthog mech. So you really get to appreciate the size and scale of that Scorpion mech. And then we've got the Falcon, which is again slightly taller than the Scorpion mech. It's about a head taller, not including the canopy protruding off the back. That said, he is way leaner, so it doesn't look as bulky or as big. I did say in a previous video for this mech that was intentional. I wanted him to come across as lightweight. And then finally, the biggest, baddest monster of them all, the Phantom mech, the Hunter mech. And as you can see, he absolutely dwarfs the Warthog mech. It really does show you how ginormous the Phantom mech is. And in case you wanted to see them all together, here they all are on the shelf together. This doesn't really do the size comparison justice because of the perspective. It's really hard to get the camera in a good place where you can really see the size difference. That said, they do all look nice together, and I think you guys have been wanting to see them together for a while. So there you go. And that's just about it. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.